Hi everyone, this is Karen.
Hey everybody, I am Shane.
Today we're looking at part 1 of The Phone of the Wind.
Helping people deal with grief.
And the vocabulary words are grieve.
Grief.
Despite her grief over her son's death, Natalie found the strength to carry on.
Install.
Install.
The security company installed some new cameras on the property.
Connect.
Connect.
My computer won't connect to the internet.
Including.
Including.
Felix plays many sports, including soccer and baseball.
Disaster.
Disaster.
Last month's earthquake was the worst disaster I have ever experienced. So we're talking about something very meaningful and very special, I believe. Yes. It's called The Phone of the Wind.
Yes.
And what does it do? What's the purpose of the phone of the wind?
Yeah, so basically it's a way, so it's a phone, right, that's disconnected from the actual phone line.
That's right.
And you can, the original person, I forget the town he was from.
Otsuchi?
Otsuchi, right? He had a cousin who died.
Yeah.
And he wanted a way to be able to connect with his cousin, just talk to him, you know? Say, I miss you and stuff like that. So he would use this phone to talk to his cousin.
That's right.
Right? And so it was a way to deal with his grief.
And I remember in 2011, there was a tsunami in Japan, and a lot of people lost their lives. So I think the phone was open to the public.
Yeah, he opened it to the public.
So a lot of people who wanted to talk to their loved ones, to the ones that passed away, they could use the phone and kind of have a proper goodbye. And I think that's a really meaningful thing and very important to the people who have lost somebody.
Yeah, so wow, it's a really touching story actually.
I know.
Such a simple thing, but it has a lot of meaning.
I know. Wow. Great idea though.
All right, let's learn more about the phone of the wind.
Enjoy.
Enjoy.
The Phone of the Wind, helping people deal with grief. In the Japanese town of Otsuchi, a white telephone booth sits in a garden on top of a hill overlooking the ocean. The phone booth, which has become known as the Phone of the Wind, serves a surprising purpose. It helps people deal with grief.
Hello and welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm Kim.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're talking about something that's a little bit serious, a little bit artsy, a little bit interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, it's very touching, and it also makes you think too about, if you lose someone in your life and it happens in a really terrible, tragic, or sudden way, how people deal with really difficult, sad emotions like that.
Yes, we're talking about grief. Grief is a great sadness, especially about someone's death. You can feel grief when someone passes away or when something really terrible happens. It's just this big sadness inside of you. For example, despite her grief over her son's death, Natalie found the strength to carry on. So you may feel very sad or hopeless about this situation when you lose someone, but in the end you can find the strength to carry on with your life.
Yeah, especially when you lose things, right?
Yes.
Grief through if you lose someone. Or I've also heard people who are in maybe a terrible accident and they can't walk.
Yes.
They feel grief, oh, I can't do this anymore. And you lose something really important in your life and you'll feel grief. Let's go back up to the top of the article there and see if we can read the full title. It gives us an idea. It says, The Phone of the Wind, helping people deal with grief. That kind of got me when I first read it. The phone of the wind? Not the sound of the wind or the cry of the wind. No, the phone, the telephone of the wind, helping people deal with grief. It's kind of interesting, right? Well, let's read on and we'll find out more. It says, in the Japanese town of Otsuchi, a white telephone booth sits in a garden on top of a hill overlooking the ocean.
Oh, sounds peaceful.
This is already kind of like one of those Miyazaki movies.
Right? Yeah, this really sets the scene there.
Cute little house, a little garden. There's the ocean down below, but the weird thing is there's a white telephone booth standing there in the garden on a hill overlooking the ocean.
That's right, and the phone booth, which has become known as the Phone of the Wind, serves a surprising purpose. It helps people deal with grief.
That is very cool and very interesting, and also, as you said, kind of artistic and beautiful in its own quiet little way. Let's take a break and we'll come back and find out a whole bunch more about the phone of the wind.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。我们这2天的课文是要介绍可以为人们疗伤的风之电话亭 The Phone of the Wind。在日本的大垂町这个地方啊，有一座白色电话亭，它就坐落在俯瞰大海的山顶花园里面。哇，这个画面感觉很美耶，听起来是不是就有点像宫崎骏电影里面的场景呢？好，这时候老师们用到 artistic 这个字，就是在 art 后面加上 istic，artistic 可以用来形容是艺术的，也可以形容是有艺术天赋的。那如果是 artsy， 在 art 后面加上 sy，artsy 则是可以用来形容是有艺术气息的，不会常带有负面意义来表达说是附庸风雅的那种喜欢假装自己有艺术气息的那一种。好，那么课文接着写到说，那一座白色电话亭呢，也就是风之电话亭，它有一个令人惊讶的用途，就是帮助人们来处理伤痛。这边有一个单字 grief 这个名词它表示悲痛、悲伤，那它的动词是把 f 改成 ve 变成 grieve 表示悲痛、感到悲伤的意思。接回到课文中。
The phone of the wind, helping people deal with grief. The phone of the wind was built by Itaru Sasaki, a 70-year-old garden designer. In 2010, Sasaki installed the phone in his garden as a way to speak to his cousin, who had passed away from cancer. Although the phone inside the booth was disconnected, Sasaki felt as if it allowed him to connect with his late relative. Because my thoughts couldn't be relayed over a regular phone line, I wanted them to be carried on the wind, he said.
All right, so yes, the phone of the wind. There it is, this white little phone booth in a garden on top of a hill overlooking the ocean. What is it all about? Please tell us more, Kim.
Yes, the phone of the wind was built by Itaru Sasaki, a 70-year-old garden designer. In 2010, Sasaki installed the phone in his garden as a way to speak to his cousin, who had passed away from cancer. So this phone was created as to have a connection to someone who's no longer here.
That is really interesting. All right, so this guy is a garden designer. That means he designs the layout and puts all the plants and beautiful flowers in gardens to make them really, really pretty and attractive. So that gives us the idea of why, when we hear about it, it sounds like it's so pretty. He's partly, an expert in that. But he also put this phone there in his garden to speak to his cousin who died, who passed away from cancer. We use this verb to install. When you install something, you put something in place in a way that it will probably work. We often use this with machines that we have to put in a place and then maybe connect to other things to make sure that it works properly. Something like a television, parts of your computer, a stove in your kitchen, or a washing machine. You need to plug it into the electricity, connect it up to the water, make sure it all works properly. So once you've installed it, it should work just fine. Here's another example. The security company installed some new cameras on the property. They didn't just dump the cameras on the floor and walk away. No, they plugged them in, put them in the corner, pointed them in the right directions. They installed those cameras so that they would work. All right, so he installed this phone. He built the phone booth, put the phone in there, designed it all so it would look nice so that he could speak to a cousin who had passed away, who died of cancer. Although the phone inside the booth was disconnected, Sasaki felt as if it allowed him to connect with his late relative. Wow, so the phone was disconnected. It wasn't actually installed like most phones would be, plugged into the telephone system. It was just a dead phone, basically, a phone that doesn't work, but he would use it to kind of speak in a way that people might pray or meditate to, the spirit, the ghost of his late relative.
It sounds useful for dealing with that grief of someone who has passed. And we use late here to refer to someone who has passed.
Right.
We don't mean, oh, you're late, hurry up. No, late relative, late husband, late wife, late grandfather, all this refers to someone who has already passed.
Yeah.
And this phone sounds like a great way to connect with that person. To connect, to join together two things. You can connect your phone to the internet, you can connect two cables together, you can connect with a person if you're friends and have a good relationship. For example, my computer won't connect to the internet. That would make me mad.
Yes, definitely. Your computer,
I hate that.
Your computer might be connected to the phone lines, but even if you're using Wi-Fi or something like that, it kind of just goes through the air, goes through space, we would still use that word connect. And you also notice that, yeah, we said late relative, his cousin passed away. In English, often to be polite and to be kind and sensitive to people's feelings, we don't use the word dead, right? His cousin, his dead relative.
A bit too direct.
Yeah, it's a little too direct for some people, so we do use these words. So if you're talking about someone who died or something like that, be careful of the words you choose, because using the direct, clearest word is often a little bit rude. All right, back to the article. So this is Itaru Sasaki speaking. He says, because my thoughts couldn't be relayed over a regular phone line, I wanted them to be carried on the wind, he said.
Oh, that's very nice.
Lovely.
Sort of putting your feelings out into the world and letting them be known. That's good.
I guess when the cousin was still alive, he could pick up the regular phone line, a normal phone, and call, hey, cousin, how are you doing today? He could relay or communicate his thoughts, but of course now with his late cousin, he wanted his thoughts to be carried on the wind, kind of like, as we said, like a prayer, or like, thinking of someone in a very clear, direct way. All right, we'll take a break and we'll find out how the phone of the wind went from being important to one man to being important to thousands of people.
风之电话亭是在2010年由一位名叫佐佐木的园艺设计师所建造的。那这一位70岁的园艺家在他们家的花园里面设置这个电话亭，是用来当做跟死于癌症的亲人说话的一种方式。虽然这个电话亭里面这个电话是没有连线的，可是佐佐木觉得这支电话仿佛让他跟逝去的亲人有了联系。也许当他对着这个话筒讲话的时候，就好像类似在祈祷啊，或是沉思，可以安抚自己的伤痛。好，那补充一下，文中用到 late relative 是指逝去的亲人 ，late 在这边是描述过世不久的已故的。好，那刚刚 Mike 老师则用到 meditate 这个字，它有沉思啊、深思熟虑的意思。那这个字是拼作 meditate。好，那我们再来看课文单字 install， 它表示设置、安装，在后面加上 ation 就会变成名词 installation， 可以表达安装、设置的意思。下一个单字 connect， 它可以表达有联系、连结。那这个字也可以当及物用，变成使什么有联系、使什么连结的意思。我们在 connect 前面加上否定字首 dis， 然后在字尾加上 ed， 构成这个 disconnected， 就可以用来形容这个服务啊、线路等等，它是没有连接的，是中断的。那这边还有3个重点。第一个 as a way to 加上动词，可以表达作为什么的方法，用这个方法来怎么样怎么样。举例来说 Jenny prepared a big meal for her friends as a way to express her thanks. Jenny 为朋友们准备一顿大餐来作为表达感谢的方式。第二个重点是 pass away， 它是 die 的委婉用法，是表达过世、逝世的意思。例如Jane was heartbroken when her cat suddenly passed away. Jane 的猫咪突然过世，她的心都碎了。好，第3个重点是句型 as if 主词加动词是表达仿佛怎么样，好像怎么样。那么 as if 可以用 as though 来代换，后面接的子句呢可以用直说法，也就是说它的时态是照正常变化的，或者是你也可以用假设法来表达。举例来说He looked as though he had seen a ghost. 他看起来仿佛是看到鬼，好像是看到鬼的样子。好，那我们接回到课文中。
The phone of the wind, helping people deal with grief. In 2011, a tsunami hit northeastern Japan and left around 16,000 people dead, including 10% of Otsuchi's population. To help the many people who had lost family members or friends in the disaster, Sasaki decided to open his telephone booth to the public. The phone gave people a chance to say all the things they never got a chance to say to their loved ones. Since then, the telephone booth has helped countless people deal with loss.
All right, so we're back with the phone of the wind, originally designed by a garden designer to speak to his late cousin. But then something happened in Japan that made the phone of the wind important to not just one person, but to thousands of people. It was a great and terrible tragedy.
Yes, in 2011, that's March of 2011, a tsunami hit northeastern Japan and left around 16,000 people dead, including 10% of Otsuchi's population. It's quite a large number.
Absolutely. Remember that very, very clearly. Including, this preposition just means this group, this thing we're talking about is part of a group. This group includes those things. We often use this in a sentence to kind of give some examples of the things you would find in that group. All right, so if I say, oh, come to my party, there'll be lots of food, including pizza and cake. So there will be other foods at the party, but some of those foods, that group of foods, includes pizza and cake. Here's another example with Felix. Felix plays many sports, including soccer and baseball. He also does running, he does mountain climbing, I don't know other things that he does, but the sports that he plays include soccer and baseball. All right, back to the article.
Well, to help the many people who had lost family members or friends in the disaster, Sasaki decided to open his telephone booth to the public. After that tragedy, there was a lot of feelings about it, a lot of grief, a lot of sadness. And he decided to open it up to people who had been affected by this disaster. A disaster being an event that results in great harm and difficulty. We talk about natural disasters, which can include tsunamis, typhoons, earthquakes, tornadoes, things like that. We can also have disasters like train crashes or airplane crashes that are just events that cause a lot of people to get hurt and are just really bad for those people involved. For example, last month's earthquake was the worst disaster I have ever experienced. As we said, earthquakes can be pretty big disasters.
Yeah, of course, in Taiwan we had that terrible train disaster a few months ago, right? So a lot of sadness and grief around that, just like with the earthquake and the tsunami there in Japan back in 2011. So when these people have these terrible things happen, they need ways to kind of go through the emotions of this sadness. It says, the phone gave people a chance to say all the things they never got a chance to say to their loved ones. It's one thing about disasters is people often lose their lives, but lose their lives quickly and in unexpected ways. And when that happens, the people who are left behind, who are still alive, they feel like, oh, if I could only have told them that I love them, or I miss them, or I'm sorry we had that fight last week. You know, all those types of really complicated, sad emotions come out and are very strong for the people who are left behind. So they want a chance to say things to their loved ones that they never got a chance to say because they've died. So since then, the telephone booth has helped countless people deal with loss. So many, many, many people, probably hundreds or thousands of people, have come to use this phone of the wind to speak out to the wind and to speak to the spirits and the memories and the souls of the people they have lost, to deal with the loss, that is, to go through the emotions of losing someone and sadness and grief, as we mentioned before. This is really touching.
It is. It's sort of a nice chance to express yourself. Don't leave things left unsaid with your loved ones. Tell them you love them, tell them you appreciate them, and really take every day as it comes.
That's a very good point. It's better to use a real phone and talk to the real person than to wait too long and have to use the phone of the wind to talk to their soul. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We'll have more about the phone of the wind and how it continues to help people in tomorrow's article, so please come on back for that. Until then, bye-bye.
风之电话 亭在2010年建造，那么隔年2011年，日本东北部遭到海啸袭击，造成大约16000人死亡，这也包含了大锤町10%的人口。那为了帮助这场灾难当中失去亲友的人们，佐佐木就决定把他的电话亭开放给大众使用，让人们有机会可以把来不及跟家人说的话给说出来。好，先来看2个单字 including 它是介系词，表示包含包括。那么 disaster 它是指灾难灾祸，是个名词。这边还有2个重点，第一个hit 在课文里面，它是指说以有害或者是具有破坏性的方式去影响某人或某事物，那它可以当及物或是不及物用。当主词是地震啊、台风等等的这种灾难的时候呢 ，hit 可以把它翻译成侵袭或是来袭，这时候它意思就跟 strike 相同。举例来说 ，The typhoon is expected to hit the island。这个台风预计会侵袭那座岛屿。第2个重点是 leave 在这边是表达某事件或者是灾难它导致了什么样的结果，那用法是 leave 加受词加上形容词。举例来说 The car crash left 3 people injured， 那起车祸导致3个人受伤。好，那么以上是这些讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
The phone of the wind, helping people deal with grief.In the Japanese town of Otsuchi, a white telephone booth sits in a garden on top of a hill overlooking the ocean. The phone booth, which has become known as the phone of the wind, serves a surprising purpose. It helps people deal with grief. The phone of the wind was built by Itaru Sasaki, a 70-year-old garden designer. In 2010, Sasaki installed the phone in his garden as a way to speak to his cousin,who had passed away from cancer. Although the phone inside the booth was disconnected, Sasaki felt as if it allowed him to connect with his late relative. Because my thoughts couldn't be relayed over a regular phone line, I wanted them to be carried on the wind, he said. In 2011, a tsunami hit northeastern Japan and left around 16,000 people dead, including 10% of Otsuchi's population.To help the many people who had lost family members or friends in the disaster, Sasaki decided to open his telephone booth to the public. The phone gave people a chance to say all the things they never got a chance to say to their loved ones. Since then, the telephone booth has helped countless people deal with loss.
Fujong MRT Station is in Banqiao District in New Taipei City. It is where the old Banqiao Station once stood. Today, the area is filled with restaurants, KTVs, and all kinds of stores. The station also neighbors many famous tourist spots. Outside Exit 2, you can see the Fujong Land Bridge. It resembles a giant dragon and changes colors at night.The Lin family mansion and garden and Nanya night market are within walking distance. The Fujong MRT station area is an ideal place to spend some leisure time.
See you next time!